Hey, what's up? This is Eric, and you have just entered the craziness that lives inside my head. Starting with this podcast, I'm going to have at the beginning or maybe in the middle some advertising. I hate advertising, so I shouldn't even do this. But it's just a little advertising, no more than 30 seconds of. Right now, I'm advertising my new book. It's been turned into an audio book. So when you hear it, just hang in there. Now, let's get to the show. I really don't know what to talk about. The craziness that's going on in my head today is I got so many subjects, so many things that I just like I should write them down. And I get upset because a lot of people might say I should write them down and I should write out my podcast. Well, I've done that. I mean, if you listen to my podcast, if you notice some podcasts are very clear, and if it sounds like I'm reading, chances are I'm reading. Those podcasts might take me a whole day to write it out. Because then I'm thinking in my head, well, I should say this, I should say that, and I should say the correct English way, and spelling, and hopefully pronunciation. But that take all day. And meanwhile, I was going to do that today on this podcast, and I was going to write. I had two subjects I wanted to talk about, and I realized it's going to take me all day just to get the research. The first thing I want to talk. I'm going to do one podcast at a time. In this podcast, I'm going to talk about my prostate cancer and there's a book out. I should get this book. Hold on. I want to talk to you while I pull up my Kindle here because I'm reading a book. I've been prognosed with prostate cancer, but it's localized, which means it hasn't spread. And my urologist said to me, he explained all the details, and there's no need for surgery. There's no need for he said, you don't need, how do you put it to me? You don't have to write out your last will and testament. He said, in fact, you probably died of obesity before you died of prostate cancer, which didn't sit well with me. But anyway, he told me that I should read this book on prostate cancer. And he was saying that they have a lot of new treatments because he's going to keep close contact, with me to see about if my PSA go up. And he said if my PSA go up, then he's going to send me to a cancer specialist. And he said chances are I still won't need the surgery, to take out my prostate or the radiation because they have new treatments. Okay, which sounds good to me. And I'm going to be quite honest with you. When I Google what I've had, because I got the lab results, and I didn't see my doctor till 30 days later. I think in one of my podcasts I mentioned that, and I was upset about that. But anyway, then when I Google it, what I have is what they call a slow. Prostate cancer is very slow. Mine is localized. It hasn't spread, and I like this. So he said that I'm going to watch you very closely. I'm going back to him in 6 months, and every 6 months I have to take a PSA test. And if it goes up, he's going to send me to a cancer doctor. I still shouldn't need the surgery or the radiation because I Google all that. You may think I'm crazy, but I still like sex, and I still want to have sex. You take your prostate out, and you do that other thing, radiation. I'm not hearing very good things about it. Some people thought I was crazy. This woman at my job, when I told her that, I said, she thought I was going to, oh, so you're going to have the surgery. I said, no, I'm not going to have the surgery. I can't have sex after I have the surgery. She looked at me like I was crazy. So that means more to you than life? Yes. What's the purpose of living if you can't have sex? That's part of life. If I could still do it and I'm still in the mood to do it, I want to do it. I don't want you to destroy me. Anyway, the name of the book is by a Dr. Patrick Walsh, and it's called Surviving Prostate Cancer. Okay. And I read this book, and the thing I read in the book that was really, really, really interesting, being that I am an African American or Black American, the thing that was interesting that he put in this book, and he was explaining how they were missing cancer, how you call it, prognosing cancer in Black Americans or African Americans because they were using the technology to find cancer on the Caucasians. And they realized after they did this study, it's not the same place. African Americans, prostate cancer was in a different place. And the way he explained it, he was saying, think of it as a house. You have a basement, you have the regular house, and you have an attic. And the way they were taking biopsies of Caucasians was in the basement because majority of the Caucasians, so he said, that's where they found cancer. So they was missing all the African Americans when African Americans finally get diagnosed with prostate cancer. It spread because African Americans, when they looked for it, was always in the attic. They had no idea to look for it in the attic. And then he went on. I want you to read the book. I'm going to tell you it again. The name of the book is Surviving Prostate Cancer. It's the 4th edition. You got to read this book. And so now they did all this study. So now they know pretty much more ways of treating prostate cancer for African Americans, which is different from the way treating cancer for Caucasian Americans. And the treatments and the medication and everything. I find this very interesting. Because if you heard some of my podcasts, I've always had problems with doctors, especially doctors who, it has nothing to do with white, black, whatever. I had problems with a doctor who always wanted to put you on medication for the rest of your life. And I was never into that. And I used to have clients, I'm a massage therapist, I had clients, African American clients, come to me sometimes and they be complaining about doctors. They put them on this medication, it's not working. And a lot of African Americans, I'm going to be honest with you, I'm one of them, I guess, think that a lot of this medication, especially now in COVID-19 days, a lot of this medication doesn't work for African Americans because they don't test it correctly. If they test it for Caucasian and it worked that way for Caucasian, it's going to work for everybody. No, it's not. And this book acknowledged that. The way you treat cancer in Caucasian is not the same way you treat cancer in African American. Now we're going to get to what I really want to talk about, is this COVID-19 vaccination. I should say vaccination, sorry. And there's a lot of black people I know, I work around them, I live with them, not going to take the vaccine. I know of cases with African Americans. There was African Americans who got COVID and died. I'm not gonna say no, that didn't happen. Yes, it did happen. But then now I'm hearing and experiencing stories with African Americans who got the vaccine. They both got the 2 shots. And here in my town, one died. She got her 2nd shot. She sat in the car and she couldn't breathe. And she went back, to where she got the shot because they told you she's not supposed to leave right away. And they rushed her to the hospital, and I think she died on the way or whatever. Now I'm hearing there are African Americans who got both their shots. One I hear had got the blood clot, and another one I'm finding out has been in the hospital for 2 weeks now with pneumonia. Now, I like the explanation on this one. Because they say that 2 weeks, 2 weeks prior to that, he got his vaccination. But 2 weeks prior to that, he went into the emergency room, said he couldn't breathe. So what they did was they gave him the COVID-19 test first to see if he had COVID. Of course, you walk into an ER and you can't breathe, which makes sense. They're going to test you for COVID because we're in a COVID pandemic. He tested negative. So since he tested negative, I guess they talked him into getting the vaccine. So he got both his shot in a week. I heard through another person who knows this person, after a week he got his second shot, he got sick. But it didn't, the usual sickness, the cold, like he has a cold and everything. He got that. He took a day off. He went, and then a week after that, he couldn't breathe. So he went back to the ER. And he's been in the hospital ever since, for 2 weeks now. And the interesting thing is, they didn't know what it was. The first thing, they kept him because maybe they said it was acting like a blood clot. And being that he had both his COVID shots, I guess they was looking for that. They didn't find that. Well, I'm hearing now what they found, that he has pneumonia. Well, and it was explained that if he has pneumonia, he probably got the pneumonia. He probably always had the pneumonia because what I told you, before he got his shots, they think he had pneumonia. They didn't know what it was, but they think it was pneumonia when he first got his shot. So now he has pneumonia. But I'm not my thing was, I said to the girl, I said, well, maybe the COVID shot aggravated whatever the little pneumonia or whatever he had prior to that. The COVID shot probably aggravated and gave him the pneumonia. But they're not going to say that. They're not going to say the same thing. I like the way they explain all these side effects of COVID vaccines. They're rare. Well, it can't be too rare. People getting it. It's not. I mean, I could. Let's take for it. It was on the internet. 8 Yankee. The baseball team Yankee, 8 people got it. The side effects, whatever the side effects it was. Oh, reinfected. They got infected, and that's rare. That was a rare event. It's not rare. It's rare if you're going to say all those people is getting that, and you spread that ratio across the world. It's going to be rare. But if you got 8 people in the same organization or 8 people in the same house getting it, it ain't rare. I don't care what people say. So anyway, when I read this book, and that book touched on that, how they realize you can't treat African Americans the same way you treat Caucasians. And when they do these studies, even when they was doing the COVID-19, one of the reasons why a lot of blacks don't want to take it, because we don't know how many blacks was in the testing. How many people, what do you have, 4,000 people in it? Well, out of 4,000 people you test this vaccine on, how many of them were black? On how many of them was Native American or Asian or whatever? How many of them were white? Chances are, I'm going to be honest with you, if you have 4,000, I suspect chances are 3,500 was probably Caucasian, and only 500 represented the blacks and the Native Americans and whatever. Being that we are only 10% of the society, they only going to test 10% of research on those people. So if you have 4,000 people, even 2,000 people, you test this vaccine on, only 10% of that probably is going to be black. They're not going to test more than 10% because we are only 10% of the population. That doesn't mean it's going to work. You might got 10% of the people of the population that it will work on. What about the other 10% that it won't work on, that you don't have in that group? I'm just saying. I'm ranting. I'm just ranting. This morning when I woke up, I had all this craziness and other subjects on my mind, and this was one of them. This is the one that I was going to, what I said at the beginning, I was going to research and write it out, and this way I can explain what I'm talking about nice and calmly because I could read it. Well, that was 2 weeks ago. I haven't written it yet. So I decided, let me just rant and talk about it. I mean, I'm not a racist and I don't believe in all that. I believe that everyone is an individual. And being that we are individual, you cannot pick 4,000 people. This is, I guess, the way they do it. They pick 4,000 people or 2,000 people at random in the population, and they test these new medications, these new vaccines on these people. But that doesn't mean that you're going. I get it and I don't get it because you pick them at random, supposedly at random. It's supposed to represent the whole population, but that's not true. I don't care what nobody says. That's not true. Because whatever you pick at random may not be random. I mean, there are people who gravitate to stuff like this. I see them on Facebook. They got them on Facebook now. They're looking for volunteers to be tested for post COVID. They want to test. I think if you never taken the vaccine, they want you to do the study because they want to study you and all like this. Well, how you know that's random? How do you know that's random? It's random in the fact it's on Facebook, but what I'm talking about, there are certain type of people who gravitate to stuff like that. Is that random? Is that truly random? I mean, I know you might think I'm crazy, which I am. I'm thinking if people gravitate to a certain thing, maybe their DNA and their genes are the same to make them gravitate to that. What about the people who doesn't gravitate to that? Do they have the same DNA and genes? I don't know. Like I said, you might think, "Oh, he's crazy. Look at this." Well, I am crazy, and this is what's going on in my head today. I'm not saying that every medication doesn't work. What I'm saying is, because they was talking about it, I think they're doing it. They're mandating people to take jobs and mandating people to take the vaccine. I disagree with that. Because even though they say it's rare, they keep saying, I love that, it's rare. Well, if I take the vaccine and I drop dead, that ain't rare for me. That's that. I think it's a decision that each human being should have the right to make. If I don't want to take the vaccine, and I refuse to take the vaccine, and I get COVID the next day, and I drop dead, that's not the same thing as you forcing me to take this. You force me to take it because I need a livelihood. I gotta work. I gotta survive, and you force me to take it, and then I drop dead. Well, to me, that's on you. You didn't give me my right to make the choice. If I had the right to make the choice, that's different. That's like remind me of days of HIV and AIDS. Not everybody back in the 80s, not every gay man. There were a lot of gay men having unsafe sex. Remember that? Safe sex, unsafe sex. That used to be all over the place in the 80s. There was a lot of gay men having unsafe sex. A lot of gay men died. I'm going to be honest with you. I say this, majority of my friends today are not alive. A lot of my friends back then was dead by the 90s. Unsafe sex. Okay. Now, ask me that question. Now, I had a friend who asked me that question. We were talking about it because he didn't come out to the 90s. He was young at the time, and he was questioning me about how was life in the 70s and the 80s. And that's what my podcasts are about, what I went through in the 70s and 80s. And I told him the truth. I said, no, I did not have safe sex in the 80s. The first time I ever had what they call safe sex, and I didn't even know it was safe sex, is a guy picked me up, or I picked him up. This back in the 70s, and he used a condom on me. The reason why he used a condom on me, because he worked in a shelter. They didn't call it a shelter back then. They called it a flop house. He worked in a flop house, a men's flop house. And he saw what was going on because back in the 70s, a lot of those guys were getting gonorrhea and syphilis and all that. And that's why he wore a condom, because he didn't want to get gonorrhea and syphilis. He didn't know me from Adam. He picked me up. I'm walking the streets. He picked me up in his car, take me. Of course, he told me this. He said, listen, I don't know you from Adam. I want to have sex with you, but I'm going to use a condom. That's the first time I had someone use a condom. That was back in the 70s. The second time I used a condom was in 2004, I think. But anyway, getting back to what I was saying. Yeah, there was a lot of gay men who didn't have safe sex when AIDS was out. But that was their choice. That's what their choice. And I know some guys who didn't use condoms, who came down with AIDS and unfortunately died. I mean, they weren't bitter. That was their decision, because that's what they wanted to do. Now, I do know some guys did get bitter. I know one guy got very bitter, and I don't know if he's still alive today. I haven't heard from him for a long time. I don't know if he's still alive today. And he got bitter. I wasn't there in the situation. It was one of those, and he claimed he knew where he got AIDS from. He was in an orgy. If you in an orgy, in a 3-way, in a 4-way, in a 5-way, I don't know how you cannot. I don't know how you can know who had it, but he swear he knew who had it. He hate the person, and all he was going on and on and on, because now he had it. I don't know. And like I told my friend who asked me these questions about how it was in the 80s and 70s, and even in the 90s, and I said to him, I was 430 pounds. How much sex you think I had at 430 pounds? I tell people this. What saved me in the 70s and 80s from so far, I got to knock on wood, what saved me from AIDS and HIV? I was 430 pounds. When you're 430 pounds, you can't walk out the door and have sex. I wish I could. I was very jealous of my friends back then. Every time we went to a bar, I'll go to a bar. I could sit at the bar all fucking night, and not one guy would even give me a look. Now, my 2 friends I go to the bar with, they're in the back kissing and hugging someone in the freaking bathroom having sex. And I'm just sitting up there, and then this last call, they got boyfriends to go home with, or I should say one night stands to go home with, and I go home alone. This is after I go to Kentucky Fried Chicken and have a bucket of chicken. I go home alone. That's what saved me, is I was 430 pounds, too fat. Fat people don't just jump up and have sex. And then, I'm going to be honest with you, when you do find somebody, because once in a while of course once in a while, I mean, come on. There are guys who like you like that, and they will have sex with you. Then it comes to mind, well, maybe I should be safe. Maybe I should make him wear a condom, right? Then you think, well, if I play it safe and make him wear a condom, he might get mad and don't want to have sex with me. And I haven't had sex in 2 years. So these are the decisions that you have to make when it comes to medication, vaccination, and being, how you say, safe for your life, your livelihood or whatever. And that's what was on my mind this morning. This morning I was on my mind because I'm hearing they was doing it in certain states. Well, certain states I heard that certain jobs and professions are mandating their employees get vaccinated. And I got annoyed at that. And I said that shouldn't, I don't know what it should or not. But to do that, if I was in that situation, I don't want to get vaccinated, and you force me to get vaccinated, and I drop dead, that's on you. That's because of you. That's the boss. That's on their conscience. But if I have if I had the freedom to make a choice, if I want the vaccine, and I take the vaccine, and I get sick, in my opinion, I have no one to blame but myself. Because I made that decision to take the vaccine. That is what I'm talking about today. Anyway, this is Eric, and I want to thank you for listening to the craziness that lives inside my head.
Nemesis Horizon Project, Reptilian Logs, Stefan Reptilian. This novel depicts a futuristic society in the year 2040, containing a variety of complex characters of humans, reptilians, and hybrid breeds. In this fictional world building spanning across countries, the manuscript effectively integrates a sense of impending doom within the dystopia. Filled with imagination and creativity of what is beyond reach, this book sets out to achieve the daunting task of envisioning humanity and interspecies relationships through a new light. Covering topics of queerness, fatherhood, parenting, and sci-fi fantasy, it plunges into the depths of multifaceted aspects. As a whole, the book develops crucial topics for thought and contemplation, ranging from sexuality to human suffering and power.